For our chapter 1, this will be the questions or the content of the chapter 1. First, let us define the human geography. Human geography focuses on how people make places, how we organize space in society, how we interact with each other in places and across space, and how we make sense of others and ourselves in our localities, regions, and world. Then advances in communication and transportation technologies are making places and people more interconnected. It gets you connected with the interconnection. And also, many people and places look more alike, but despite all these changes encouraging us to be more alike, our world still encompasses a multitude of ways in which people identify themselves and others. Because the world consists of nearly 200 countries, a diverse religion, thousands of language, and numbers of settlement types from small villages to enormous global cities. And all of these attributes come together in different ways around the globe to create a world of endlessly diverse places and people. So, understanding and explaining this diversity is the mission of human geography. And the word globalization, we define it as the set of processes that are increasing interactions, deepening relationships, and heightening interdependence without regard to country borders. And when geographers look at the outcomes of globalization as being distributed unevenly, they are not only talking about the local. Geographers use scale to understand the interrelationships among individual, local, regional, national, and global. Because what happens at the global scale affects the local, but it also affects the individual, regional, and national. And similarly, the processes at these scales also impact the global, vice versa lang. Then globalizing processes occur at the world scale. These processes bypass country borders and include global financial markets or even global environmental change. Because the processes of globalization do not magically appear at the global scale, because what happens at other scales helps create the processes of globalization and shape the outcomes of globalization. And for example, at the same time as we travel the world and continue to engage in field work and research, we are constantly reminded how different places and people are. And these processes at the individual, local, regional, and national scales continue to change human geography and shape globalization. So, parang no place in Earth is untouched by people. As people explore, travel, migrate, interact, etc., and they make places. Because no environment stands apart from human action. Because each place we see is affected by and created by people, and each place reflects the culture of the people in that place over time. Then next, what are geographic questions? Geographers study human phenomena such as the language, religion, and identity. And they also study physical phenomena such as the landforms, climate, and environmental changes. Geographers also examine the interactions between human and environment. Ang human geography is the study of human phenomena on Earth, while the physical geography concentrates on the physical environment and natural processes of the Earth. Again, human geography is the study of human phenomena. It is also the study of people and their relationship with their physical surroundings, because human geography involves human interaction with their environment. Again, the physical geography, this includes investigating different landscapes and landforms, variety of weather and climate, and what we see around the globe and how that affects the different ecosystem. Geographers are trained in both in studying the human and physical worlds, but most focus on one more than the other. In short, geography is the why of where. Why and how do things come together in certain places to produce particular outcomes? Or why are some things found in certain places but not in others? And to what extent do things in one place influence those in other places? And from these questions, we add, so what? Why does it matter that things are different across space? What role does a place play in its region and in the world? And what does that mean for people there and or in elsewhere? And these questions are the core of geographic inquiry, whether human or physical or environmental or medical geography. And they are of critical importance in any effort to make sense of our world. Then geography deals with so many aspects of our world, ranging from people and places to coastlines and climates. And what do the various facets of this wide-ranging discipline have in common? And the answer lies in the perspective that both human and physical geographers use spatial. Spatial means it pertains to space on the Earth's surface. Virtually all geographers are interested in spatial arrangement of places and phenomena, how they are laid out, organized, and arranged on the Earth, and how they appear on the landscape, and mapping the spatial distribution of a phenomena is typically the first step to understanding it. For example, in medical geography, mapping the distribution of the disease, the first of the several pandemics in the world. In medical geography, then where doctors now map cases of cholera in London's Soho district, wherein cholera is a term used to denote a set of diseases in which diarrhea and dehydration are the chief symptoms. As you can see, he marked all the areas with water pumps. Yun, kung makikita nyo dito sa Broad Street, dito mas madami ang may cholera. Okay, then approximately 500 deaths occurred in Soho, and as the map took shape, Snow noticed that an especially large number of those deaths clustered around the water pump on the Broad Street. Pinakagitna ng place, kaya mas madami ang nagkaroon ng cholera. Then the spatial perspective. Geography and being geographically literate involves much more than memorizing places on a map. And human geographers use a spatial perspective as they study a multitude of phenomena ranging from political elections and urban shantytowns to gay neighborhoods and folk music. And understanding the change over time is critically important, and understanding change across space is equally important. Yeah. And to bring together many subfields of human geography and to explain to non-geographers what geographers do, four major geographical organizations in the US came together, introducing the 5 themes of geography. And the 5 themes are derived from the spatial perspectives of geography. First is the location. Location highlights how geographical position of people and things on Earth's surface affects what happens and why. Some geographers develop elaborate models describing the locational properties of particular phenomena, even predicting where things are likely to occur. And also, siguro ang mga katanungan siguro dito in the location, why are villages, towns, and cities spaced the way they are? Okay? Or siguro a geographer could determine the best location for siguro ililipat yung mga endangered species or any wildlife refuge, and also they can do migration patterns, human settlement patterns, and road networks. Then the second, the human-environment interaction, wherein the physical and human characteristics of a place provide keys to understanding the interrelationships between people and their environments. And this geographic theme addresses this question like, what is the relationship between humans and the environment? Because human depends, modify, and adapt to the environment. Because geographers study the reciprocal relationship between humans and environments. Then the third theme is the region. Phenomena are not evenly distributed on the surface of the earth. Instead, features tend to be concentrated in particular areas which we call regions. In understanding the regional geography of a place allows us to make sense of much information about the place as well. It helps us answer these questions like how and why is one similar to another, and how do areas differ? Because regions are distinguished by its physical and human characteristics. Kung anong pagkakaiba-iba ng kada region by its physical, for example, their landforms, their climate, their soil, and when it comes to human characteristic, kung ano ang kanilang economic status, their social, their cultural characteristic. Then the fourth place All places on the surface of the earth have unique human and physical characteristics, and one of the purposes of geography is to study the special character and meaning of places. Because people develop a sense of place by infusing a place with meaning and emotion, and by remembering important events that occurred in a place, or labeling a place with a certain character. Because when we experience if we give meaning to a place, we can have a feeling of home when we are in a certain place. Then last, the movement. It refers to the mobility of people, goods, and ideas across the surface of the planet. Spatial interaction between places depends on the distances among places, accessibility of places, and transportation and communication connectivity among places. Because interactions of many kinds shape the human geography of the world, and understanding these interactions is an important aspect of the global spatial order. And for the cultural landscape, in addition to the 5 themes, a landscape is a core element of geography. Geographers use the term landscape to refer to the material character of a place, the complex of natural features, human structures, and other tangible objects that give a place a particular form. And human geographers are particularly concerned with the cultural landscape because it means the visible imprint of human activity on the landscape. Because no place on earth is in a pristine condition, because humans have made an imprint on every place on the planet. The cultural landscape is the visible imprint of human activity and culture on the landscape. As each group of people arrived and occupied the place, they brought their own technological and cultural tradition. Then this will transform the landscape accordingly. Then why do geographers use maps, and what do maps tell us? Maps are an incredibly powerful geographic tool, and cartography, which is the art and science of making maps. And maps are used for countless purposes: to wage war, make political propaganda, solve medical problems, locate shopping centers, bring relief to refugees, and warn of natural hazards. Then reference maps shows locations and places and geographic features. Yan yung makikita natin na simpleng location. Then thematic maps tell stories, typically the degree of some attribute of the movement of a geographic phenomena. This is an example. As you can see, the type of climate the Philippines have. Mostly thematic maps yung pinapakita para malaman, madaling malaman ng viewer or ng reader sa isang textbook kung yung extent nga or yung degree of some attribute na pinapresent. Then generalization in maps. Generalized maps help us see general trends, but we cannot see all cases of a given phenomena. Kumbaga, pag magse-search kayo when it comes to map, hindi nyo lahat makikita yung street names, kundi yung, for example, name of the country and its capital. Or, yun lang siguro yung makikita nyo when you search the world map. But its streets, hindi na nila yung sinasama. Then, geographic studies include both a long and short-term environmental change. And geographers monitor the Earth from a distance using remote sensing and using technology that is a distance away from the place being studied. And also, nagkaroon din tayo na, kumbaga, establishment of satellite-based na yung GPS or the Global Positioning System, where it allows us to locate things on the surface of the Earth with extraordinary accuracy. At kung pwede nyo naman gamitin yung Google Earth, kasi parang ipapakita nila sa inyo yung 3D. Kung gusto nyong maghanap ng mga popular places around the world, you can use or browse on Google Earth. Then, why do geographers concerned with scale and connectedness? Geographers study places and patterns at a variety of scales, including local, regional, national, and global. And scale has two meanings, and only the second definition ang gagamitin natin. Wherein the second is the territorial extent of something. Because as geographers, the scale of the research or analysis matters because we can make different observations at different scales. For example, we can study a single phenomena across different scales. And in order to see how what is happening at the global scale affects localities, and how what is happening at a local scale affects the globe. For example, when we study the distribution of wealth at the scale of the globe, we see that the countries in Western Europe, Canada, sa US, sa Japan, sa Australia, sila yung pinakamayayaman. But when it comes to Africa, Southeast Asia, parang ang masasabi agad the poorest. Does that mean everyone in the US is wealthy and everyone in Southeast Asia is poor? Certainly not. But on a global scale of map, it is stated that is how the data appear. Kumbaga, it is a matter of how we use the scale. Because the level of detail and patterns observed change as the scale changes, and geographers must be sensitive to their scale of analysis and also be wary of researchers who make generalizations about a people or a place at a particular scale without considering other scales of analysis. And also here, another example is when you shift scales to North America and examine the data for states of the United States and the provinces of Canada, the wealthiest areas on the coast and the poorest are in the interior and in the extreme northeast and south. Yun. Kumbaga, when it comes to the term US, ang alam natin, they are, mayaman. But if you dig in more in research on their map, you can see the differences when it comes to their economic status. And also the state of Alaska and the province of the Northwest Territories have high gross per capita incomes that stems largely from all revenues that are shared among their residents. Geographers' concern with scale goes beyond an interest in the scale of individual phenomena to a concern with how processes operating at the different scales influence one another. Then next, the region. Geographers often divide the world into regions for analysis. In geography, a region constitutes an area that shares similar characteristics. And to identify and delimit regions, we must establish criteria for them. And these are the formal region, functional region, and perceptual regions. Formal region is marked by homogeneity in one or more criteria or phenomena. A formal physical region is based on a shared physical geographic criterion. Or in other words, formal region is an area inhabited by people who have one or more characteristics in common. And shared characteristics may be a common language, economic activities, or also their crop production, physical characteristics, such as their climate. And some formal regions have distinct boundaries which make them easy to identify. Kumbaga, ang formal region ay human-centered properties. Then second, the functional region is defined by a particular set of activities or interactions that occur within places that are part of the same functional region to create connections. Or in other words, functional region is an area organized to function politically, socially, and economically as a single unit, or are centered on a focal point that connects other areas with various systems. For example, yung makikita nung transportation pattern, yung communication, their economic activities. And functional regions are not necessarily culturally homogeneous, and instead yun nga, the people within the region function together politically, socially, and economically. Then the perceptual regions are intellectual constructs designed to help us understand the nature and distribution of the phenomena. This is based on the shared feelings and attitudes of the people who live in the area. And it reflects the cultural identity of the people in the region. A perceptual region, example ay it can include people, their cultural traits such as their way of dress, their food, their religion, the place, their physical traits such as the mountains, plains, or kung meron sila mga coast. Yeah. Then the culture. Location decisions, patterns, and landscapes are fundamentally influenced by cultural attitudes and practices. Culture refers not only to the music, literature, and arts of a society, but also to all other features of its way of life. Because yung other features of its way of life, pwede ito yung prevailing modes of dress nila, their routine living habits, their food preferences, kung anong itsura ng mga houses, and also the public buildings, the layout of their fields and farms and systems of education, government, and law. Because culture is an all-encompassing term that identifies not only the whole tangible lifestyle, but also their prevailing values and beliefs. Cultural geographers identify a single attribute of a culture as a cultural trait. Yeah. But also, culture traits are not necessarily confined to a single culture. And culture complex, it is more than one culture may exhibit a particular culture traits, but each will consist a discrete combination of traits. For example, in some cultures, yung herding of cattle. In East Africa, for example, they follow their herds along seasonal migration paths, consuming blood and milk as important ingredients of their diet. And also, may iba namang yung pag-herd ng cattle ay they are the essence of survival, security, and prestige. In Europe, yung cattle naman ay kumbaga kinukuhanan lang ng gatas and dairy products such as the butter, yogurt, and cheese. Kumbaga yung pag-consume sa cattle ay iba't iba sa ibang culture or places. And cultural heart, it is an area where cultural traits develop and from which the cultural traits diffuse. Then, the connectedness through diffusion. Diffusion occurs through the movement of people, goods, or ideas across space. The process of dissemination, the spread of an idea or innovation from its heart to other places, is known as cultural diffusion. Whether diffusion of a cultural trait occurs depends on time and distance from the heart. And in combination, time and distance cause time-distance decay in the diffusion process. Because the farther a place is from the heart, the less likely an innovation is to be adopted. Similarly, the acceptance of an innovation becomes less likely the longer it takes to reach its potential adopters. Then there is also a cultural barrier because it works against diffusion because certain innovations, ideas, or practices are not acceptable or adaptable in particular cultures because of their prevailing attitudes or even taboos. For example, ang pagbabawal sa mga alcoholic beverages and also sa pagkain nila ng meat, fish, or other foods. And also, may mga kumbaga beliefs or values na use of contraceptives. Then, geographers classify diffusion into two broad categories. First, the expansion diffusion. An innovation or idea develops in a heart and remains strong there while also spreading outward. Expansion diffusion takes several forms. Contagious diffusion. It is a form of expansion diffusion in which nearly all adjacent individuals and places are affected. For example, a disease can spread in this way, infecting almost everyone in a population. However, an idea such as a new fashion may not always spread throughout a contagious population. Kumbaga, lahat ng nakapaligid dun sa mismong, kumbaga for example, may hawak ng disease. Lahat ng kanyang makakasalamuha ay magkakaroon. Hindi pili. While the hierarchical diffusion, a pattern in which the main channel of diffusion is some segment of those who are susceptible to what is being diffused. Or an idea spreads by passing first among the most connected individuals. Kumbaga, pili lang ang makaka-adapt or diffusion. For example, how religion spread. Syempre, para lumakas yung, dumami ang population, number of, population when it comes to a religion, syempre, ang uunahin ng mga missionaries ay yung mga nobles, yung mga middle class, yung mga kings, yun. Para yung followers ay magto-turn in din sila dun sa religion because they are following their leader. Or, example din ay yung marketing when it comes to the product. Syempre, ang unahin ng mga companies ay ipapakilala itong product sa mga artista. So, they could market it in the public. And from that, yung fans ng mga artista, syempre, sila yung madi-diffuse or makakabili nung pinakilalang product or na-endorse. Then, the third form of expansion diffusion is stimulus diffusion, wherein not all idea can be readily and directly adopted by a receiving population. Wherein an idea diffuses from its cultural heart outward, but the original data is changed by new adopters. For example, siguro dito ay the McDonald's or any fast food chain having different menus across the globe. Kumbaga, ini-incorporate nila yung local products or any flavor na meron lang sa bansang yon. Then, the relocation diffusion, it involves the actual movement of individuals who have already adopted the idea or innovation and who carry it to a new locale where they proceed to disseminate it. Relocation diffusion occurs mostly sa pag-migrate ng tao because when migrants move from their homeland, they take their cultural traits with them. So, pag dumami na dun sa neighborhood na yun, yung, for example, mga Filipino, syempre, they are developing an ethnic neighborhood in a new country. that helps immigrants maintain their culture in the midst of an unfamiliar one. Then what are geographic concepts and how are they used in answering geographic questions? Geographic concepts include most of the bold-faced words in this module, such as the relative location, the perceptual region, diffusion, and cultural landscape. In doing geographic research, a geographer thinks of a geographic question, one that has a spatial or landscape component. They choose the skills of analysis, then applies one or more geographic concepts to conduct research and answer the question. And geographers use mostly fieldwork, remote sensing, GPS, qualitative and quantitative techniques to explore relationships, linkages among people in places, and to explain also the differences across people, places, scales, and times. Then research in human geography today stems from a variety of theories and philosophies. And to understand what geographers do and how they do it, it is easiest to start by defining what geography is not. First, rejection of environmental determinism. Kasi dati, kumbaga, for example, yung kay Aristotle, he said that the traits to the respective climates of the regions, kumbaga na-adapt yun ng tao. Because environmental determinism, it means it holds the human behavior individually and collectively and is strongly affected by or even controlled or determined by the physical environment. It suggests that the climate is the critical factor in how humans behave. Kumbaga dito sa environmental determinism, it relies on an approach which implies that individuals are bound to their environmental settings. And these forms of physical geographies determine human behavior, the existence of different forms of societies, and din nga, the environment determines the character and attributes of cultural and ethnic groups. Kumbaga, nire-reject na ngayon yung itong environmental determinism when it comes to geographic or geographical research. Yan. And they argued that humanity was capable of much more than merely adapting to the natural environment. Then the possibilism, the reactions to environmental determinism produced counter-argument. An approach known as possibilism emerged, espoused by geographers who argued that the natural environment merely serves to limit the range of choice available to a culture. The choices that a society makes depend on what its members need and what technology is available to them. Geographers increasingly accepted the doctrine of possibilism, and geographers increasingly discredited the environmental determinism. Because possibilism is based upon the assumption that environment sets certain constraints and limitations, but culture is otherwise determined by social conditions. It says that the true and only geographical problem is that the utilization of possibles. Even possibilism has its limitations because it encourages a line of inquiry that starts with the physical environment and asks what it allows. Because in human cultures, it frequently pushes the boundaries of what is environmentally possible through advances in technology. Dahil ngayon, since tayo ay technologically dependent world, it is possible to do many things that are at the odds with the local environment. And research today tends to focus on how and why humans have altered the environment and on the sustainability of their practices. In the process, the perspective of cultural ecology have been supplemented by those of political ecology, which means an area of inquiry fundamentally concerned with the environmental consequences of dominant political economic arrangements and understanding. Because the fundamental point is that human societies are diverse and the human will is too powerful to be determined by environment. Okay, that's all for the chapter 1.